Hi guys, and thank you so much for joining me. If you are new to my channel, I am Kat and I like to talk about true crime, conspiracies and all sorts of related things. However, lately you might have noticed that I have started mixing up my content. I will be focusing mainly on true crime. However, I will also be adding different type of videos, mainly because I usually love talking about everything and anything, and I can't seem to keep myself organized posting on different channels. So I want to get a schedule, regular. And that's why I'm going to start posting everything on this channel, because it's easier for me to keep it organized. So thank you for joining again. The case that we are talking about today was requested by one of the admins of the Facebook group Justice for Jeremiah Valencia. And also I really need to change the style of the way I am giving you the story because of YouTube, which keeps on demonetizing my videos. So at this point, guys, I don't even know what I can say, what I need to censor. I don't even know how to move forward with this, because any type of video I make and publish is demonetized by YouTube. Any type of true crime, be that is graphic, is not graphic, I have no idea what to do anymore. So you might see some changes of me trying to censor some words or spell the words out for you rather than say the word. I have no idea what is triggered. I have no idea. Anyway, let's get into today's story. At the beginning of 2018, an inmate at Santa Fe County Jail in New Mexico heard some horrifying details from another inmate. This was a confession. A boy was murdered. Now, we all know about rumors in jail. An inmate says that they hear something, and most likely usually turns out to be nothing. They just want to maybe gain some favors, or their parole hearing is soon, or whatever, and so they just come up with stuff to benefit them. However, an investigation would soon uncover that this was not just a rumor. It was January of 2018 when an inmate informed a guard of something she heard, a potential homicide. She went on to say that 35-year-old Tracy Ann Pena was talking about finding her son deceased at home and blamed it all on her boyfriend, 42-year-old Thomas Wayne Ferguson. At the time, both Tracy and Thomas were in jail for probation violations. Thomas was on probation after pleading guilty to kidnapping and aggravated battery of a family member back in 2014. Tracy was on probation after pleading guilty in August for attempting to tamper with evidence in relation to concealing, the sniffing stuff. Even though in jail usually rumors are unfounded, on this occasion the authorities decided to investigate. It was a very serious crime that someone confessed after all, and it also turned out that Tracy certainly had a son, 13-year-old Jeremiah Valencia. Jeremiah Andrew Valencia was born on 6th of December 2003 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was born to Andrew Valencia and Tracy Pena. Jeremiah had 3 siblings: Mikel Lillard, Karen Valencia and Adriana Valencia. Jeremiah was a very active, handsome boy. He was hyper, he was like a daredevil. He wanted to do things, even when he knew that he would hurt himself by doing mischievous things. He would still do it because he loved to have experiences in life. He had a lot of interests, including fishing, playing basketball, but he was fascinated by cars. Whenever he would be out, he would always point out how he loved that car make or the other, or, oh my god, look at that car. He was looking forward to getting his driver's license and having his own car. He started his interest in cars at a very young age, and he wanted a car so he could take care of the family and drive his little sister around. Jeremiah was an amazing big brother, and he always stood up for his little sister. Jeremiah's aunt, Celine Meira, helped raise him. With his mom, Tracy, in and out of prison, Celine would often get calls to get the kids whenever Tracy was in trouble. If something would be happening, Tracy would call Celine to ask her to go over there and take the kids for a while. But this time it was something different. She never got a call. In late 2017, Celine was trying to reach Jeremiah, so when she couldn't, she tried to reach his mom Tracy, but sadly she couldn't get hold of either one of them. Karen Gonzalez, Jeremiah's stepsister, kept calling CYFD, the New Mexico Children, Youth and Families Department, and the police almost on a daily basis to try and find out what was going on, but no one was giving her any answers. A few days later, Celine had a conversation over the phone with the sheriff to ask if they found Jeremiah, and when the officer said that they will send someone to talk to her at home, she just knew that something was horribly wrong. She figured the police found Jeremiah. Jeremiah's remains were found buried off a state highway near Nambi. Jeremiah Valencia was beaten within an inch of his life by his mother's boyfriend Thomas Ferguson on November 25, 2017, and then forced into the 26 by 39 inch dog crate at the family home in Nambe, north of Santa Fe in New Mexico. Jeremiah Valencia's stepbrother, Jordan Nunes, now 23-year-old, then repeatedly flipped the crate, causing the final injuries that killed the boy. When Tracy was interviewed about Jeremiah by investigators, she claimed he ran away from home and she didn't know where he was. It's so typical though, right? Whenever we talk about this kind of cases, right from this you can tell they are involved somehow when they come up with this kind of stories. I mean, how do you not know where your 13-year-old is? You know, it's just... Tracy, however, eventually confessed that on the 26th of November 2017 she got out of jail for a previous charge, and when she returned home to the home that she shared with Thomas, she found Jeremiah dead. She claimed that he was wrapped up in a blanket on the bed. She then confronted Thomas, and then he grabbed Jeremiah's body, placed it in the car and sped off. When asked why she didn't call the police, Tracy said that she was really scared of Thomas. He had molested Jeremiah in the past and she strongly believed Thomas murdered Jeremiah. She also claimed that after some time Thomas drove her to a location just off New Mexico 503 near Nambi and told her he buried Jeremiah's body. Having a potential gravesite, investigators went on the scene located off New Mexico 503, just north of Santa Fe, where they were taken to a specific area by Tracy. With the assistance of cadaver dogs, they found the suspected site, which seemed to be badly concealed by tree branches. What they found there was a horrifying scene. Inside a plastic storage bin, they would uncover the body of Jeremiah. When the search for Jeremiah was conducted, investigators spoke with Thomas's own son, 19-year-old Jordan Anthony Nunes. He said he had just recently reconnected with his father back in October after being away from one another for around a year. A few days later, his father then took Jeremiah to live with the family members in Mora. Investigators also spoke with Jeremiah's 13-year-old sister, who informed them that Jeremiah had been living in Mora with a family member. She also said that Jeremiah was at the family's home on the 6th of December 2017 for a birthday party, but this was the same day that Tracy had claimed Thomas drove her out to show her where Jeremiah was buried. It becomes quite obvious at this point that Thomas and Tracy were trying to build some kind of a cover story. Jeremiah's sister eventually admitted that she was told by Thomas if anybody asks about Jeremiah to just say that he was staying in Mora with family. But in a twist of events, when Thomas was interviewed by investigators, he blamed his own 19-year-old son for Jeremiah's death. According to his story, Jeremiah and Jordan were playing aggressively when Jeremiah died, and he didn't think to call the police or the ambulance because he was scared he would be the one who would be blamed for it. He also said he didn't know where Jeremiah was buried. However, he knew the person who buried him, but he of course refused to identify that person. But then Jordan changed his own version of events. According to Jordan, the night Jeremiah died, Thomas punched him in the face and stomach multiple times and dragged him into a back room in the house, locked the door behind him and started playing some really loud music in that room. His father then told him that if anybody ever asked where Jeremiah was, to tell them he was with an uncle in Mora. Jordan also said that Thomas put padlocks on all of the doors of the home to make sure that nobody could leave. But then, oh my god, this is one twist after another. But then Tracy would also change her own version of events when she was presented with a different version of events that the investigators received. If at first she claimed that Thomas disposed of Jeremiah's body when she returned home from jail, she then claimed Jeremiah's body was actually kept hidden away in the garage for 3 days before Thomas and Jordan wrapped him in plastic and then put him into a plastic storage box. Thomas and Jordan then drove down to New Mexico 503 to the area where they then buried his body. It was later revealed that Jeremiah Valencia suffered years of abuse, neglect, and even torture. When Jeremiah's younger sister was interviewed, she revealed Jeremiah would frequently be beaten by Thomas, sometimes so brutally that he needed to use a cane to walk or use a wheelchair. Jeremiah would be forced to sleep inside a locked dog cage. His 13-year-old sister said that on the day Jeremiah passed away, Thomas began punching him in the living room and then dragged him into the kitchen and into the bathroom where the attack continued. After the brutal attack, Jeremiah was put back in the dog cage and probably died alone in there. She also told investigators that Tracy, her mother, knew about the dog cage, and when Thomas wasn't around, she would sneak her son water and food. Jeremiah wasn't even enrolled in school, and the last time he was enrolled in the district was when he was a 6th grader back in 2015-2016. Jeff Jeffert, a spokesperson for Santa Fe Public Schools, confirmed Jeremiah attended local schools from 2009 to 2016, most recently Carlos Gilbert Elementary, but he wasn't a student in the district for more than 1 year. An office employee at Pojoc Valley Schools near Jeremiah's home in Nambi told the New Mexican that Jeremiah was not enrolled in that district either in the past year. Jeremiah was described by the family's neighbors as a quiet boy who loved playing with his dogs. According to Al Martinez, a neighbor, the family had 2 pit bulls, one brown and another brown and white. Al said that sometimes he saw Jeremiah in the yard with his sister, but he mostly stayed silent. However, he would always say hello, but that was about all the conversation that he would get out of Jeremiah. In the summer before the attack, Jeremiah was always seen playing with dogs. He was simply in love with them, especially with the litter of puppies that they had, and they were his best friends. Al Martinez noticed that the kids never actually went off to school, and he never saw Tracy or Thomas go to work during the typical commuting hours. Even though the house that Jeremiah lived in had surrounding neighbors, the family was isolated. After they moved in, Thomas installed a chain link fence to separate themselves from the rest of the neighbors. There wasn't much interaction with the neighbors or other people in the surrounding area. There were no people seen around the house until Jeremiah's body was found, when people started bringing flowers, trinkets, and letters of condolences for a boy who seemed to live a life of pain, suffering, and loneliness. Jeremiah's grandfather, Ricky Tapia, said he loved playing music and mechanical tinkering. Rick Tapia, who was at one point appointed by the court as a temporary guardian, called Jeremiah an amazing kid who loved the trumpet, and he loved to be doing mechanics and mechanical tinkering. He loved to take things apart. Rick cared for Jeremiah and his sister in 2011 after a state Children, Youth and Families Department investigation into the family. There were concerns raised about the children's care. After 1 year, Jeremiah and his sister were returned to Tracy, the mother. But this wasn't the first time that Tracy gave up Jeremiah and his sister. In 2008, Rick and his wife petitioned for guardianship of Jeremiah and his sister, and Tracy signed off the agreement, writing she doesn't want to cause any more destruction in the children's lives. Both Tracy and Thomas had lengthy criminal records, whilst Thomas's son, Jordan, had been awaiting trial on a battery case. Tracy had pleaded guilty to no contest a number of times since 2009 for a variety of charges, including shoplifting, attempted shoplifting, criminal trespass, and attempt to commit a felony with the possession of a controlled substance. She was booked into the Santa Fe County Jail a total of 22 times. Thomas had 20 years worth of charges, including charges relating to kidnapping, domestic abuse, abandonment or abuse of a child, and the charge of criminal sexual penetration that would be dropped as part of a plea agreement. In 1996, he served probation for a drug charge, and when he violated this probation, he served 6 months in jail. In 2001, he was sentenced again to probation for shoplifting. In 2003, Thomas was found guilty of battery on his wife, at the time Amanda Ferguson, in Santa Fe. Thomas knocked Amanda to the ground, punched her in the head, choked her until she fell unconscious, and then kicked her in the upper torso and upper back. During his trial for this case, a doctor testified about the injuries on Amanda and noted some abrasions to the left side of her face and forehead, an abrasion to the right forehead, to the right side of her face, an inner lower lip laceration, abrasion to the left jaw, and 2 abrasions on the front part of the neck. A paramedic also testified that at the time of the attack, Amanda was pregnant and also holding their baby. The paramedic noticed on the baby that she had 2 hematomas on her head. Thomas was sentenced to unsupervised probation for 6 months on the condition that he attends court-ordered counseling. Like that ever works, right? Honestly, I think that he was just let off too easy. This is where the problem is. No wonder that he has 20 years worth of charges. He's always left off too easily. He's always. And when will they ever learn if they are let off so easily? In 2014, Thomas was indicted on felony charges of criminal sexual penetration, kidnapping, aggravated battery against a household member, and interference with communications. In this case, Thomas kept his longtime girlfriend, not Tracy, at his home for 5 days, during which he beat and SA'd her. She was then able to contact her mother, who in turn contacted police. While in jail on this charge, Thomas's public defender filed a motion to review his release conditions, and in this motion he wrote that since his arrest, Thomas had been studying anger management and codependency issues. Like that ever works. According to the prosecutor, Thomas actually attempted to kill himself as opposed to be arrested for the attack on his girlfriend. When police arrived to arrest him, he took an overdose of prescription medication because he was trying to get out of it, and he probably believed that if he manipulates the situation, he will get away with it. In 2015, Thomas reached a plea agreement in which he pleaded guilty to kidnapping and aggravated battery against the girlfriend. The plea agreement stipulated that his conviction be classified as non-violent. He would be sentenced to 10 years and 8 months in prison, but then the judge suspended almost 7 years and 8 months of the sentence and credited Thomas with 495 days for the days he had already spent in jail. He was released on 5 years of supervised probation and was ordered to be on an electronic monitor for 2 years. In February of 2016, a prosecutor filed a motion to have Thomas's probation revoked after a probation officer went to his home and found his then girlfriend with obvious signs of battery. Thomas admitted that he violated the probation by having negative contact with police. The judge allowed Thomas to remain on probation even though he violated it, and despite his probation officer's recommendation that he served the remainder of his sentence in jail. What the heck is up with these judges? What's happening? Then, on the 20th of November 2018, around a week before Jeremiah passed away, a deputy district attorney filed another motion to revoke Thomas's probation. In this motion, he referred to Thomas as an absconder for failing to report to his probation officer in June and for failing to follow court orders for requesting permission to move homes. The fact that Thomas had such a lengthy criminal record but was walking free raised a lot of questions, including from a police chief who even questioned how many times these individuals need to be given second, third, fifth chances. After 25 years of the chief working in the force, it was frustrating, and he admitted that the system needs to be looked at and that they need to find out why Thomas was even out of jail. The sister of Thomas's victim in the 2014 case said that Thomas was smart when it came to picking who he did it to, stating that he picked those who were vulnerable, those who had children, or those who had a criminal background, and then he used that to manipulate and control them. She also said she and him never really saw eye to eye because she was a strong woman and he doesn't really like strong women, which, as far as we can tell, it's quite obvious by now. He would know that the vulnerable women wouldn't raise issues with police, being scared of losing their children if they even had any. And also when it comes to domestic abuse cases, we know that in general the abuser is always very controlling and manipulative, to the point that the victim is doing everything that they want out of being scared. Back in 2015 in Santa Fe, Thomas pleaded guilty to kidnapping and aggravated battery, and after his release he faced up to 9 years if he violated his probation, and he really did violate this probation. Less than a year later he was arrested again for attacking another woman. It was either a miscommunication or a lack of communication between prosecutors in Rio Rancho and Santa Fe, which resulted in Thomas not being rearrested and sent back to prison. According to prosecutor Natalie Perry, she was told that the case would not proceed, while the staff at the prosecutor's office in Santa Fe were unaware that Thomas had pleaded guilty in the Rio Rancho case. So really, at the time that Jeremiah was killed, Thomas should have been in prison, because that guilty plea was essentially Thomas admitting that he violated his probation. The New Mexico Probation and Parole Division had an address for Thomas when he stopped checking in with his probation officer and was deemed an absconder from the law. They went... check this out, okay. I'm laughing, it's not funny, but I'm laughing because this happens time and time again, and we always come across these kind of things. So the police, they went to check on him at the home that he shared with Tracy. They knocked on the door, knock, 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 and nobody answered, so they simply just left without even leaving any paperwork saying that they've been there, and they never checked back again. This seems to me like the police is just going to, go knock on the door. Let's just prove that we went there. But if nobody answers, it's fine. Let's just carry on doing our next job, right? Because at the end of the day, for them it's just a shift and they get paid, and so on. Maybe if the police would have returned and checked back, they would find Jeremiah and the state that he was in, and they could have saved his life. After Jeremiah's death, a prayer vigil was held in the area, and one woman in attendance said that she grew up with Tracy and revealed that at one point Tracy called her and asked for help to get out of her violent relationship with Thomas. Tracy was afraid of him. Another person who attended the prayer vigil, who I believe was the same neighbor who saw Jeremiah playing with the dogs, spoke of a similar story. Tracy called his eldest daughter, who she used to go to school with, and asked her to help as well in leaving Thomas. Some of the children who attended school with Jeremiah in the past were also present at the vigil. Savannah Molina said that she and Jeremiah were the best friends while in school, and she described him as a very sweet and caring person. She and her other friends were wondering where Jeremiah was since he stopped going to school. Tracy, Thomas, and his son Jordan were all hoping to receive bail, but the Santa Fe District Attorney's Office filed a petition to keep them behind bars until they went to trial. The petition stated Thomas admitted to punching Jeremiah in the face. After he said something, he then took him into a back room, shut the door, and brutalized him. He choked the victim, holding him against the wall. He then turned the victim upside down and slammed his head into the ground several times. Also mentioned in the petition was Jordan telling investigators that Jeremiah would not be fed while in the dog cage, and Thomas would punish him by hitting his fingers with a hammer. inside the shed at the home. Investigators found which fit the description provided by Jordan, alongside a wheelchair that Jeremiah had to use because of the prolonged abuse. They also found blood on a carpet where it was believed that Jeremiah was beaten to death by Thomas. While Tracy wasn't there when the fatal beating took place, she knew Jeremiah was subjected to months of abuse and torture and failed to act or to protect her son. According to the petition, she was more concerned about her outstanding arrest warrants and law enforcement contact than she was with the well-being and protection of her own 13-year-old son. Investigators also found Facebook messages from Jordan, who said that if Tracy would say anything, then he would murder her as well. According to Jordan, Thomas would often hurt Jeremiah with brass knuckles, a homemade spear, a 5-point hammer, and even steel-toed boots. He was also forced to wear an adult diaper and was forbidden from using the bathroom. Thomas frequently urinated on Jeremiah and would use the homemade spear to him. There were at least 2 occasions when Jordan believed Jeremiah was going to die while being choked by Thomas. Thomas would push the spear to Jeremiah's neck and lift him up against a wall, completely cutting off his air supply. According to Jordan, on the day that Jeremiah died, Thomas punched him in the face with such force that he believed Jeremiah's teeth have been knocked out, before his head was slammed repeatedly off the floor. One thing to distance himself from the murder, I think, Jordan claimed that his father pointed a shotgun at his head and forced him to help move Jeremiah's body from the dog cage to the bedroom. After Jeremiah's murder, many people would call for New Mexico's child abuse laws to be changed, including one that would make intentional child abuse resulting in death a first-degree felony, which would be punishable by a life sentence regardless of the child's age. At the time of Jeremiah's death, the law was limited to victims 12 years old and younger, which honestly doesn't make any sense. Even an older child wouldn't be able to defend themselves against an adult, and the raging one at that. New Mexico lawmakers voted to advance a bill that would make the intentional and fatal abuse of a child up to age 17 punishable by a sentence of life in prison. At a committee hearing in Santa Fe, Rep. Sarah Barnes, an Albuquerque Republican, implored lawmakers to support the sentencing enhancements which have been proposed multiple times in recent years. Meanwhile, Rep. Eliseo Alcon, a Democrat from Milan who voted to advance the bill, questioned whether more could be done to prevent cases like that of Jeremiah Valencia. Some people who opposed the bill said that a change like this could result in a juvenile who kills another juvenile being sent to life in prison. However, Representative Sarah Barnes, who put the bill forward, said that a grand jury would not consider a juvenile killing a juvenile child abuse. Even if he would be a juvenile killing another juvenile and receiving a life in prison, a sentence of life in prison, from my point of view, I think that that juvenile, when they make the conscious decision to kill another juvenile, they know what they are doing, so I think that they should be held accountable to the full extent of the law, in my own opinion. As I mentioned already, Jeremiah was not enrolled in school at the time of his death, and this raised many questions as to how this wasn't noticed by the authorities. According to the West Las Vegas School District, Jeremiah and his sister were enrolled in the district in the fall of 2016. But in February of 2017, they were both withdrawn from school by Tracy. According to Santa Fe Public Schools, Tracy began paperwork to enroll Jeremiah and his sister at Capshaw Middle School in March of 2017. This was around the same time that Tracy, Thomas, and the 2 children moved from Las Vegas to Santa Fe. However, the paperwork to enroll them in the school was never actually completed. If Jeremiah and his sister had been enrolled in school in Santa Fe, then it would have been the school's policy to investigate where they were when they never showed up at school. At Santa Fe Public Schools, employees are required to make at least 5 attempts to make contact when a child is absent from school, and then a record of these absences are kept on file. Between 2015 and 2016, Jeremiah was enrolled at Carlos Gilbert Elementary School, and they posted a tribute for him. They said that Jeremiah made friends easily and was always very polite, friendly, fun, loving, and extremely hardworking. He was athletic and he adored playing sports, mostly basketball. He once said that he dreamed of becoming a professional basketball player. It was at this school that Jeremiah learned to play the trumpet and was a member of the school band. Jeremiah was well liked and known as a fun kid to play with and joke with, and he wanted to learn as much as he could in school. He wasn't afraid to ask for help when he needed the help in school, whether from his classmates or from his teachers. Those who knew him in school said that when he received that help, he was always very gracious and always made sure to say thank you. He was respectful and a really kind boy. He made sure to open doors for teachers and even hug them. His teacher said that despite his young age, it was clear that he had a strong moral compass. If he made a mistake, he would apologize and then learn from it. If any child would step up to stand with or protect others, it was Jeremiah. He was a kind and loyal friend to his classmates. A few days after Jeremiah's funeral, a grand jury would indict Thomas on 18 felony charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, child abuse, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy. Jeremiah's autopsy revealed lacerations that were consistent with SA. Portions of his body were also burned. Thomas pled not guilty to all of the charges he was facing. Tracy would be indicted on 12 counts, including 2 counts of child abuse, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, 6 counts of conspiracy to tamper with evidence, and 1 count of obstructing an investigation of child abuse or neglect. Jordan was indicted on 13 counts, including 1 count of child abuse, resulting in death, 5 counts of tampering with evidence, 6 counts of conspiracy to tamper with evidence, and 1 count of obstructing the reporting or investigation of child abuse or neglect. With the charges handed down, the Children, Youth and Families Department would announce they'd already taken a number of steps to strengthen the child protection system. They were now offering hands-on training for police officers on how to use their new web portal that gave quick access to information on troubled families. This would include details on custody disputes, allegations of abuse or neglect, as well as concerns about drugs and violence. They also started campaigns at schools that would raise awareness among the staff members of signs of abuse within pupils and how to report any concerns that they may have. A new search warrant released suggested that Jordan had a more active role in Jeremiah's murder than initially believed. Investigators have been able to obtain Facebook messages that have been sent before Jeremiah's body was found, and in one of these messages, Jordan wrote that he felt as though people were looking at him differently, like he had done it all by himself. He goes on to say that what he did was just an accident. The message read, and I quote, "I'm just unwanted here, and that's cool, but I can see in yours and Tracy's eyes, you all don't want me here ever since that happened, and they look at me like I did it all by myself. They did it too, and what I did was an accident. I never meant to do that. I miss that," referring to Jeremiah apparently, I feel bad for what I did, and if I could do things differently, I would have, but I can't. I have nightmares, and I think about that kid every day because I looked in his eyes as he left. I see that look every day. After the release of the new search warrant, Jordan pled not guilty, and just a few days later, there was a massive update in the case. On the 26th of April, just 3 months after the arrest, Thomas was found dead in his jail cell. He was found by a guard at 11:15 p.m. hanging from a bed sheet in his jail cell. Attempts to resuscitate him were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead by the state office and the medical examiner. His suicide had come just as he was about to be transferred to a state-run prison to begin serving his 6-year sentence for violating his probation. He would have been in that prison while awaiting trial for the murder of Jeremiah Valencia. The district attorney was very unhappy when he found out what had happened, as he felt Jeremiah won't receive justice and his family won't either. Thomas's defense lawyer hoped that county officials would hold the jail accountable for not preventing his death. Thomas actually left behind a suicide note in which he claimed his innocence in the murder of Jeremiah and expressed his hatred for law enforcement and the judicial system. He also wrote personal messages to family members, but it was not disclosed what those messages were. There was also writing on one of the walls which read, "I died here," along with born 4th of October 1975, died 26th of November 2017. The birth date is Thomas Ferguson's birth date. The death date is the day authorities say 13-year-old Jeremiah Valencia died from injuries they originally said were inflicted by Thomas. He also wrote on the desk, "I love my son Jordan." Around 2 months before his death, he attempted to send a letter to Tracy, which read, and I quote again, "I really do want you to know, baby, that I'm not the one who did this, and that I am truly sorry for your loss. It was my loss too, because I really do love you all so very much." Another portion of the letter read, referencing Jordan, "I know for sure bringing him down here was a big mistake. Don't get me wrong, I love him too, but all he's done since being here was caused a lot of problems between all of us, and it cost me our family. I am mad at you, and I still love you very much. I swear to God I do. I don't think you feel the same way about me anymore, because I'm sure he's blaming me for what he did." Another search warrant released in July revealed that Jeremiah had actually reached out to a family member over Facebook to report that he was being abused by Tracy and Thomas. The female relative expressed concern over Jeremiah and his sister, and Tracy responded by saying Jeremiah was a manipulative liar. The relative simply ended the conversation there without even going to the police. The following month, Jeremiah's cause of death was made public. Jeremiah Valencia died from blunt force trauma, and his autopsy noted numerous old and new injuries that were consistent with being beaten and tortured in the lead up to his murder. The autopsy report also said that there was no conclusive evidence that Jeremiah had been SA'd. However, it could also not be ruled out. Jeremiah sustained multiple jaw fractures, a displaced eyeball, tears in his scalp, cheek and ear, as well as a broken hand and broken ribs. Can you just take a moment and just imagine how much force one needs to apply to get these extensive injuries on a boy? Can you imagine how agonizing and awfully painful his last day must have been? The medical examination was hampered because of the decomposition of Jeremiah's body. His body was heavily decomposed by the time they found him. The toxicology report was just as disturbing. When Jeremiah died, he had alcohol and methamphetamine in his system. Methamphetamine was the drug of choice for Tracy as well as Thomas. In September, it was disclosed prosecutors speculated that it was actually Jordan and not Thomas who killed Jeremiah. According to newly filed court documents, Jordan repeatedly tortured Jeremiah with a homemade spear as well as a bottom-controlled shock collar. Jeremiah's younger sister may have been forced to take part in the torture. According to investigators, they found more evidence on Jordan's Facebook in which he bragged in messages that he took someone off the map and did some dirt. Jeremiah's sister actually told investigators that Jordan tortured Jeremiah on a daily basis for at least a month. He would stab him with a homemade spear and would constantly shock him with the collar. Towards the end of September, Jordan appeared in court where Jeremiah's younger sister testified about the horrors that happened at the home. Speaking of Thomas, she said it was hard, it was not fun, he was always angry and was always being mean to everyone in the house. He would take his anger out on all of them, hit them, or even hit the dogs. On the day of Jeremiah's death, his sister said that Jordan became angry with Jeremiah and he put him in the dog cage in the living room. All his cats were infected. He then started to flip the cage and he told him to sleep alone. Jordan then pulled Jeremiah out and his head was kind of dangling. Jeremiah's sister and Thomas were planning to pick her mother Tracy up from jail when Thomas locked Jeremiah in the dog cage. Jeremiah eventually fell asleep, but Jordan began flipping the cage to wake him up. Jordan then pulled Jeremiah out of the cage and he never woke up. Jeremiah's sister said that on that day he was really skinny. He had a black eye and his tooth was knocked out. She also mentioned she was previously forced to watch as Thomas poked Jeremiah with a spear and Jordan also poked Jeremiah with a spear. Thomas also forced Tracy to abuse her son when he didn't feel like doing it himself. The sister was also forced to attack Jeremiah and she was too afraid of Thomas to refuse doing it. Amanda Nunes, Jordan's mother, also testified. She married Thomas when she was 14 years old and stayed with him for 16 years. He was abusive and she was an obsession to him. She never felt like she was a person to him, but more just the thing that he liked to beat on. When they started having kids, it only got worse. She had 3 miscarriages because Thomas beat her so badly and left her for dead on several occasions. Speaking of her son Jordan, she said that Thomas didn't believe he was his son because of his skin tone and he punched Jordan when he was just 2 months old. He also said he wished the little son of a bitch would die. Thomas would force Jordan and his other siblings to hit one another and he tried to force her as well to hit the children too, but she refused, which always resulted in more beatings for her. Even though Judge Wilson acknowledged that Jordan was controlled and manipulated by his father, he believed Jordan was still a threat to the community and so he ordered he remained behind bars. Jeremiah's half-sister Karen Gonzalez described him as being very sweet and very helpful. He certainly wasn't shy and would just go up and introduce himself to people in his search for friends. Jeremiah loved Batman. Towards the end of November, it was announced that Tracy accepted a plea deal in court. District Attorney Serna said that at times Tracy was kept drugged by Thomas and was also beaten herself. Under the law, Tracy was required to speak up about the abuse that was being inflicted on her son, but the district attorney also said that Tracy was willing to take responsibility. Deputy District Attorney Todd Bullion said that Tracy met Thomas when he was selling her narcotics and as soon as the relationship began, Thomas was abusing her. He forced her to stay in the home and even watched her with surveillance that he set up. As part of the plea deal, Tracy pleaded guilty to 1 count of child abuse resulting in death and 3 counts of conspiracy to traffic methamphetamine. The other charges against her were dismissed. This would have carried a 21-year prison sentence, but prosecutors suspended 9 of those years under the condition that Tracy helped in the prosecution of Jordan. This meant that Tracy would be sentenced to just 12 years in prison. In March of the following year, it was announced that a bill had been created to track students moving between public school districts. The bill was inspired by the tragic murder of Jeremiah. He had essentially fallen off the education system's radar when his family moved from Las Vegas to Santa Fe. The Bill 447 passed the Senate 23-17, which meant that it would now be heading to the governor's desk. With the case against Jordan moving forward, it became obvious that his defense were going to argue that he was mentally ill and unable to form the specific intent to commit the crimes. His defense team also wanted to access his family history and to investigate if his father abused him whilst growing up. They also wanted to see if the childhood abuse had any impact on Jordan. Additional charges were filed against were filed against Jordan. In the indictment, Jordan was accused of flipping over the dog cage where Jeremiah was locked in forcefully, striking him in the genitals, forcing him to consume methamphetamine, striking him with a spear, using a shock collar on him, and holding him in a fireplace. A wrongful death lawsuit was filed in Jeremiah's name, and an attorney stated that Jeremiah would still be alive if state, city, and county officials had not failed him. Attorney Francis Carpenter wrote in the wrongful death complaint that this case presents a tragedy that resulted from a toxic blend of lack of interest, understaffing, negligent operation of a building and equipment, bad police training and supervision, investigation and follow-up, and systematic failures by the agencies whose purpose is to provide safety. The defendants named in the lawsuit were the Santa Fe County Commission, the Sheriff's Department, the City of Santa Fe, and 2 of its police officers, as well as District Attorney Marco Serna and Deputy District Attorney Michael Nunes. The lawsuit was seeking unspecified damages on behalf of Jeremiah's sister. Santa Fe agreed to pay $25,000 to settle the wrongful death lawsuit, which in my opinion is nothing. The murder trial of Jordan was scheduled for mid-2020, but in March it was announced that he accepted a plea deal much like Tracy. He pleaded guilty to recklessly allowing the abuse of Jeremiah and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. Jordan said that he rattled the cage, but a witness, which we are to assume was actually Jeremiah's sister, said that he flipped the cage over and over and over again. It's also corroborated by the DNA evidence, which shows that Jeremiah was in that cage, and that's likely where he took his final breath. Tracy was sentenced to 21 years in prison with 9 years suspended, which meant that she would be serving just 12 years. As for Jordan, the defense argued that Jordan had post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that was brought on by an abusive and neglectful childhood. Jordan had been in state custody from 6 years old to 9 years old, which he said has stunted his cognitive abilities and made it impossible to stand up to his father. The prosecution witness, Dr. David Salzberg, disputed the diagnosis of PTSD. He said that while Jordan reported some flashbacks from his childhood, he didn't claim to have experienced persistent and intrusive thoughts of the abuse. Jordan stood up to his father before and argued with him. He was even in a better position than Tracy to leave and get help. Before being sentenced, Jordan spoke to the courtroom and he said he hoped that moving down there to get to know his father and forgive him would help Jordan to get to know himself better and help him fix what felt broken inside. Jordan was sentenced to 21 years in prison. And with this I would like to end today's video. I've already gave my thoughts and my views throughout the length of the video, and also I can't be very graphic when I talk about scums of the earth, so I will refrain from giving an extensive opinion, because it seems that YouTube doesn't like me when I do that, so not so much freedom of speech anymore. Please do let me know, guys, what do you think about this case in the comment section down below. Thank you again so much for watching. Please take care and stay safe. Don't forget to make sure you give this video a thumbs up or thumbs down, whichever way is free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps me out. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.